We never thought they'd come like that. Our world was dying. Not from war or plague. Those had already passed, left their scars. What remained was slower, colder. The kind of death that came when a planet simply stopped caring if you lived or not. The air had thinned over decades. Crops refused to grow. Birth rates collapsed. Even light itself dimmed as the magnetic shield weakened and let in radiation that twisted DNA into something cruel. We were desperate. So we did the one thing no proud race ever wants to do. We begged. The humans, they were far from us, but their reach had grown in recent cycles. Word was, they had terraformed moons, reshaped atmospheres, even cracked dying planets open and reignited their cores. Some said they cured diseases no one else could name. Others called them arrogant, dangerous, untrustable. But when you're starving and your children wheeze in their sleep, pride becomes a luxury you can't afford. So we broadcasted the signal, a plea, for help, for mercy. We expected silence, or maybe a token message of sympathy. Thoughts and prayers, the humans called it. We thought that was their way. We thought wrong. 3 weeks later, their fleet arrived. Not warships, not at first. They came in a sleek, silver crescent that cast a shadow over 3 of our major cities. Massive floating stations, each large enough to hold 100,000 souls. No announcement, no delay. They simply landed. And then the changes began. The first ones out were engineers. They spoke little, moved fast, and seemed to understand our failing systems better than we ever had. They tore into infrastructure like surgeons. Roads were repaved overnight. Power grids rerouted, stabilized, optimized. They used machines we couldn't even comprehend, hovering crates that unfolded like origami and built towering structures in hours. At first, we were amazed. Then came the doctors. They didn't wear white coats. They wore armor. They administered treatments without asking. Injected vials that made our elders convulse and scream before they went silent. Cured, they said, though many never woke up again. They took samples from everyone. Blood, tissue, memory scans. We were told it was routine genetic filtering for adaptive treatment. It felt like a harvest. But still, they brought results. Birth defects dropped. Disease nearly vanished. For a time, our people believed. They said, maybe the humans are just cold, but they're saving us. And then the third wave landed, the gunships. They didn't bother cloaking their purpose. They hovered in place like silent threats, always humming just loud enough to remind us of their presence. One flew low over our capital during a public protest, the kind of peaceful assembly we were known for. A soft sound pulsed from it. Not a weapon, not exactly. More like a pressure wave that hit bone and soul. Everyone dropped to their knees. Some bled from the ears. No one protested again. They didn't ask for territory. They took it. The areas around their landing zones were walled off, patrols established. Our own soldiers were told to stand down and integrate. Those who didn't vanished. They installed governors, human ones. Cold-eyed, efficient men and women with steel in their voices and data in their hands. They didn't talk of freedom or alliance. They spoke of productivity, compliance, and long-term stabilization. We were no longer dying, but we were no longer free. My name doesn't matter. Not anymore. What matters is what I saw, what I lived through. The day we gave up sovereignty in exchange for salvation. We thought the humans were coming to help. But help, it turns out, was the sharpest weapon they had. It started with the schools. They didn't burn our books, they just replaced them. It began quietly, one curriculum shift at a time. Mathematical efficiency modules were introduced, human systems, human logic, their units of measurement, their timelines, their philosophies. Our children began to learn in their language. At first, it was translated. Then, not at all. Anyone over 30 couldn't follow what their own sons and daughters were being taught. Then came the history revisions. The old wars? The ones that scarred our ancestors, the ones that shaped our independence, faded out of the curriculum. Lack of verified data, they said. Subjective retellings with no measurable value. Instead, they gave us case studies, colonies that succeeded under human guidance, planets where collaborative government structures had maximized output and population well-being. Our kids didn't even know what we'd fought for anymore, just numbers, just charts. One day I asked my nephew what he knew about the martyr of Keldros, a man who once set himself on fire rather than surrender to off-world rule. The boy blinked at me like I'd asked him what color the wind was. I could feel something cold settle in my bones that day. The second shift came in law enforcement, or what they called stability administration. We never got to vote on it. They brought in what they called behavioral harmony units. Neutral, mechanical, unarmed, at least at first. Tall, faceless machines that hovered just above the ground. They followed population flows, monitored public movement. At first, they just watched. Then they began issuing compliance warnings. A loud tone, a brief light. Corrective notice for agitation behavior, they said. What counted as agitation? Talking too loudly. Gathering in groups of 5 or more. Eye contact with human officers longer than 5 seconds. That was the turning point. We weren't citizens anymore. We were assets, and assets needed monitoring. I worked at a reclamation yard outside the Southern District. Before they came, we salvaged scrap from the radiation zones, steel, tech, circuits. We fixed what we could, sold what we couldn't. It was honest work. Hard work. After they arrived, they bought out half the yard. Didn't even ask. Just posted the notice. By directive of Human Fleet Infrastructure Command, 53% of this facility has been repurposed for orbital resource collection. Compensation will be calculated based on standard human sector rate 4.2.8. We got credits, not currency. Digital tokens that only worked in human-run outlets. Places where a loaf of bread cost 4 times what it did before they came. Inflation? No. Control. My boss, a proud man named Bren, one of the last to still wear the old sigil of the Republic on his chest, protested the takeover. Not violently, just a written complaint, signed by a few workers. They called it subversive rhetoric. The next morning, he was gone. His house was clean, family relocated, not even a trace of his digital presence left. They scrubbed him like he never existed. That was the day I learned to shut my mouth. But I never forgot. I kept watching. They built towers, massive signal spires that pierced the clouds, sending data to low orbit where their observation satellites fed it straight into something they called the Nexus. We never saw the Nexus, only heard rumors. Some said it was an AI. Others whispered it was worse, a panel of human minds linked together, calculating optimal control like it was a math problem. Either way, everything we did was logged. Every purchase, every message, every emotion if you had the wrong face at the wrong checkpoint. And still, people thanked them. That's what broke me more than anything. People were grateful. Grateful for the cleaner streets, for the working trains, for the food that showed up on time. Tasteless, nutrient-dense human packs. But no one went hungry. Grateful that no one killed each other anymore. Because now? We didn't need to. The humans didn't like mess. They didn't use bullets. They used silence. You'd step out of line, and a week later your ID chip wouldn't scan. Your credits would freeze. Your apartment would lock from the outside, and you'd be relocated for reconditioning. No protests, no riots, just order. I met him on a Tuesday. He didn't tell me his name. Didn't need to. He came into the yard with scars that didn't heal clean. Burn marks along the jaw. Left eye cybernetic, twitching slightly when he blinked. He didn't buy parts. He just stood there, watching me work. "You hate them," he said. I didn't answer. Not with my mouth. Didn't need to. He nodded like he understood, like he'd seen it too many times. He handed me a metal disc, smooth, dull gray, about the size of a coin. "Keep it," he said. "They won't detect it, not yet. When it pulses red, go to the old cargo rail under the north tracks." Midnight. He didn't wait for a reply, just turned and walked away. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the disc for hours. I wasn't brave. I wasn't a hero. I was just a man who remembered what it felt like to belong to something that wasn't measured by efficiency charts and productivity graphs. When the disc pulsed red, I went. The cargo rail was dead. Hadn't been used since before the occupation. But the old tunnels beneath still ran deep. Too deep for the human scanners, apparently. There were others there. Some looked like me. Yard workers, engineers, mechanics. Some were younger, barely adults. Others were old and quiet. Eyes full of memories they never spoke of. And then there were the ones who didn't belong. Human ones. That was the shock. Real humans. Not officers, not medics, not drone commanders, but rebels. Defectors. They didn't speak much. But their eyes burned with the same fire I'd buried in myself for too long. One of them, a woman with a heavy scar running from her temple down to her jaw, said it plainly. The aid missions were never about helping. They were about trial runs. She showed us a map. Not of our planet. Of 12 others. 12 worlds where the human fleet had intervened. 10 of them no longer existed. "Controlled collapse," she said. "They come in, fix a few things, collect data, introduce dependency, and then pull out. Or worse, take over completely. If the population fights back, they crash the biosphere. Blame it on local instability. No questions asked." I asked her why they hadn't done that to us yet. She didn't answer for a long time. Then she said, "Because you're useful." Useful. That word stuck in my head for days. Useful like a tool, like a machine, like a slave. That night, I made my choice. I stopped scanning my ID at checkpoints, started walking the old alleyways again, routes no one used since the drones came. I wore old clothes, no chip in my neck, just paper tags sewn into fabric like the old days. I became invisible, and I learned. They called it the resistance, but it wasn't like in stories. No banners, no speeches, no dramatic shootouts, just sabotage. One wire cut here, one security node looped there, a shipment rerouted, a nutrient pack corrupted. Tiny hits. Nothing big enough to notice, but they did notice. They always notice. One of our runners got caught. A kid. Couldn't have been more than 17. Smart, fast. Good hands. He slipped up. Used an old route that had been flagged by one of the Harmony units. They didn't arrest him. They displayed him. Next morning, his body was pinned to the outer wall of the Sector 3 health tower. He wasn't touched. No wounds, no burns, just lifeless, and written across the wall in perfect clinical human print. Emotional instability detected. Subject removed for population safety. People didn't even flinch. They walked past it like it was a broken screen. Some even muttered thanks under their breath. Thank the fleet, one less deviant. That's when I knew. We weren't waiting for a savior. There wouldn't be some glorious rebellion. We were already in the war. We just hadn't admitted it yet. After they hung the kid's body on the tower, something in me stopped pretending. It wasn't the shock of it. Shock would have meant I didn't expect it. But I did. I think we all did. We just didn't say it out loud because saying it out loud made it real. And if it was real, then we had to do something. I remember standing in front of that wall, just outside Sector 3, watching as people passed him. His name was Tyven. No one ever said it. They called him the subject now, even in whispers. He used to hum when he walked. Nothing fancy, just little notes, low and soft. He said silence made him nervous. Now silence is all that's left of him. It rained that day, light and sharp, like needles on glass. They didn't even take him down when the storm came. They wanted us to see it, how disposable we'd become. The message wasn't just for us. It was for anyone thinking of being more than useful. After that, the resistance changed. It got quieter, meaner, less talk, no more late-night meetings with handshakes and hope. Now it was gloves and masks, unmarked comms, silence before action. I was brought deeper in. There was no ceremony, no oaths, just one of the defectors, a rough-built man with arms like steel rods, tossing me a small black case. Inside was a tool, not a weapon. A tool, looked like a screwdriver, one of theirs. "You're on coolant duty," he said. "Sector 7 tower. There's a leak in their AI ventilator hub. We're going to make it bigger." That was it. No pep talk, no mission brief. Just a tool, a target, and a time. I learned something in that moment. Real rebellion doesn't feel heroic. It feels like sweat, fear, and not looking people in the eye too long. You don't march, you don't scream, you blend. So I blended. I wore the same gray work uniform I had when I fixed old shuttle cores. I made my face blank. I let the checkpoint drone scan me without blinking. I walked into Sector 7 with a forged ID that called me Maintenance Auxiliary, Level 2. The kind of low-rank title that made you invisible to both humans and their machines. The tower was colder than I expected. Everything built by them was cold. Their surfaces gleamed too clean. Their lights never flickered. Their walls didn't creak or breathe like ours used to. It was all perfection. Sterile, lifeless perfection. I moved through the corridors with practiced ease. The layout had been drawn for me, burned into my memory. I had 6 minutes, no more. The AI ventilator hub wasn't guarded. It didn't need to be. Why guard what they believed we couldn't understand? Inside the panel, I found the primary coolant relay. I didn't destroy it, that'd be obvious. I weakened it, loosened just enough that over the next 48 hours the heat would build slowly, unnoticed, until the system triggered an emergency protocol that shut down the entire hub. What would happen then? Maybe power outages, maybe fire, maybe something worse. I didn't care. I resealed the panel and walked out like nothing happened. That night, I didn't sleep. Again. I just sat in my dark flat, watching the lights from the Harmony drones pass my window in lazy loops. I waited for the knock, for the door to open without a sound, for the end. It didn't come. But something else did. A message, not through standard comm, through analog. An envelope under my door. Inside, a photo. A real one. Printed. It was of me. Inside the Sector 7 tower, looking directly into a ceiling-mounted lens I hadn't noticed, there was no note, no warning, just the photo. They wanted me to know they saw me, and they wanted me to know they let me walk away. That's when I realized something terrible. They weren't afraid of us, not even a little. They could have erased me like they erased Taven, or Bren, or any of the hundreds that went silent. But they didn't. They watched me. They let me act. Like a child playing war in a sandbox while real soldiers stood outside the box with loaded rifles, amused. We weren't rebels to them. We were a case study. I brought the photo to the resistance handler, the woman with the scar. She looked at it, then looked at me. "They're testing us," she said. "For what?" Her lips pressed tight. She had that look again, the one all the defectors wore when they remembered too much. To see how far they can push before the organism collapses. I didn't understand. She explained it like this. To them, we're not people. We're data models, a living population graph. Emotions are numbers, reactions are statistics. If we riot, it's just a spike on a curve. If we submit, it's a dip. Either way, they're learning, optimizing. They're studying us like lab animals? No, she said. Worse. Like broken machines. That changed everything for me. Because if that's how they saw us, then there were only two outcomes. 1, get repaired. 2, get scrapped. And I was done being repaired. 2 weeks later, I met the man who called himself Director Halvin. It wasn't planned. He came to the reclamation yard during a fleet morale inspection. That's what the broadcast said. He wore a dark uniform, not military, but clean and sharp enough to intimidate. His face was smooth, unscarred, a little too perfect. He didn't look human. He looked manufactured. He walked with his hands behind his back, flanked by 2 Harmony units and 1 actual soldier, helmeted, expressionless, gun never aimed, just there. I knew better than to speak, but I watched him as he moved through the yard, inspecting things like he cared. Like it mattered whether a pile of salvaged engine cores were stacked properly. And then he looked at me, straight at me, and smiled. It wasn't warm. It was the smile of a man who already knew everything he needed to. He stepped closer. "You're the coolant man," he said softly. My stomach turned ice. I didn't reply. He nodded, pleased. "I like your work. Subtle, patient. You didn't rush. You let the system bleed." He turned his head slightly, studying me like I was a painting. "You understand entropy," he said. "That's rare among your kind." I didn't speak. I couldn't. My throat locked up. Every part of me screamed run, but my legs were made of stone. Then he leaned in. "You'll keep doing it," he whispered, "because we need more data. Don't disappoint us." And just like that, he walked away. No arrest, no accusation, just permission. That's when I understood the game completely. We weren't fighting a war, we were in a maze, and they were watching every turn. A week later, the first city fell. Not to us. To them. They called it a stabilization reset. Sector 9, home to over 200,000 people, was cordoned off in less than 3 hours. All exits sealed, comms dead, transit rerouted. From the outside, nothing looked wrong. But inside, we heard the whispers. Whole families relocated overnight. IDs wiped, homes reassigned, population density increased by 40%, and when the numbers rose too fast, they culled them back down. How? Biofilters. They claimed it was a virus. Environmental reclamation protocol activated due to airborne pathogen spike. In reality, gas, odorless, fast, clean, no bodies, just silence. Within 48 hours, the city was secure, and life went on. No media, no outrage, just another calm voice over the announcement towers. Sector 9 has been rebalanced. Thank you for your cooperation. We lost over 80,000 people. No one said a word, not even us, because now we understood. They weren't just occupying us. They were designing us, testing thresholds, measuring limits. How much death before rebellion? How much surveillance before despair? How far can the human mind stretch before it breaks? And if it breaks, what does it take to rebuild it in their image? That night I sat in my apartment, staring at the photo they sent me again, the one of me in Sector 7. I burned it. Not out of fear, but because it didn't matter anymore. They wanted us to feel small, so I was going to show them what small could become when you crushed it hard enough. Because something happens to a man when you take everything from him, not just freedom, but meaning. You can break him, or you can make him dangerous. And I was done being broken. We used to believe the worst thing the humans could do was kill us. We were wrong. Control was worse. You can see death coming. You can brace for it, rage against it. But control? That crawls in slow. It gets under your skin, rewires your instincts, makes you grateful for your own cage. And the worst part? You forget it's a cage. That's where most people were after the Sector 9 reset. Quiet, empty-eyed, walking and working like nothing had happened, like 80,000 people hadn't been erased like a math error. The resistance? We went underground, fully this time. No more tunnels, no more warehouses. That was too easy for their drones. They were tracking body heat now, sound resonance, even dream patterns, if the defectors were telling the truth. Humans had tech that could pick up emotional variance in sleep and flag you as a potential threat based on a nightmare. We operated out of moving units now, broken-down transport trucks, abandoned shuttle cars. Derelict storage containers on the edge of transit yards where scanners lagged. We called them ghost pockets, places where their surveillance glitched just enough for us to breathe. We worked in silence, no names, no talk of winning. That kind of language got you killed. We weren't fighting to win anymore. We were fighting to not disappear. I was assigned to an infiltration cell. 5 men. 1 handler. Our job wasn't to destroy anything. Not directly. That got too much attention. No, we were sent to rot the system from inside. They called us the Rust Team. Our handler was a woman with the codename Shade. I never saw her face. She wore a filter mask at all times, eyes hidden behind black lens goggles, voice modulated through a static filter. She never asked how we felt. She never asked if we were ready. She just gave us the job. And walked away. Our first target was Neuroblock 14, a quiet little building on the edge of the administrative ring, disguised as a local medical center. But inside? Human command node. Not military. Behavioral adjustment. They called it a behavioral reconditioning clinic. The place people went when they felt too much or thought too loud. Disappear for 3 days, come back docile, grateful, smiling just a little too wide. We were told to map it. No explosives, no sabotage, just blueprints, routes, camera placements. We weren't even going inside. Just watch, trace patterns, note supply shipments, ID check rotations. It should have been clean. But nothing ever is anymore. Day 2 of surveillance, one of us, Jarrow, ex-fabrication tech, quiet guy, always twitching, noticed something strange. Delivery droid came in. Didn't leave. That happened sometimes. They had maintenance bays. But the next day, another came in. Same size, same markings, same path. Didn't leave. Jarrow hacked into a discarded console near the perimeter, got into the maintenance logs. They weren't delivery droids. They were extraction units, portable surgical machines, meant for organ stripping. And the logs? They showed 43 patients processed in the last month. Only 12 were ever discharged. We didn't tell command. We voted. And we decided we were done watching. That night, we hit the clinic. Not with bombs, with failure. Jarrow infected the system with a looped uptime error, the kind that made the internal AI think it had restarted 6,000 times in 1 hour. The system froze. The building shut down. Lights, cameras, security doors. We had a 6-minute window before their satellites noticed. We went in through the waste chute. 2 of us, me and a guy named Dren. The rest covered the outside, monitoring for drones. Inside, it was colder than anything I've ever felt. Not the temperature, the absence of soul. No voices, no footsteps, just that high-frequency hum you only hear in places built by machines that never sleep. The first room we found had beds. Not the kind you rest in. Surgical slabs, metal frames with restraint loops. The smell hit us like a wall. It wasn't rot. It was cleaning agent and scorched tissue. Jarrow's count was wrong. They hadn't stripped 43. They'd harvested 92. Organs, brain tissue, neural nodes. And they weren't selling them. They were feeding them into something. At the back of the clinic, past a frozen elevator shaft, we found it. The core. A single human AI unit. Not a massive one. Portable, but dangerous. It wasn't just monitoring behavior. It was recording. Reconstructing personalities from stolen minds. They weren't removing threats. They were copying us. Testing what made people rebel. what pain tolerance we had, how fast we broke, then running simulations of resistance strategies before we ever made them. They weren't reacting to us. They were pre-living our rebellion, planning countermeasures before we even made decisions. That was why they let us act, why they let me walk out of Sector 7, why Halvin smiled. He'd already seen every version of this war, and we were losing in all of them. We didn't report the find. We destroyed it. Jarrow stayed behind, said we couldn't afford even one bite escaping, said we had to erase everything. I knew what that meant. He didn't wait for goodbye, just handed me his pack, turned, and shut the bulkhead. I heard the ignition whine start as I ran. The blast was silent in the vacuum-sealed chamber. But I felt it when I hit the street, a deep pulse through the soles of my boots. We didn't look back. That was the night it changed. Not for them, for us. We knew now. We weren't in a fight. We were in a simulation. One they'd been running over and over, perfecting responses. Every attack we planned, they had already countered in theory. It made me sick. But it also gave us a way in. Because simulations? They're only as good as their data. And data can be lied to. After Jarrow died, I stopped seeing people as people. I started seeing them like the humans did. Variables in a machine. I didn't want to. It just happened. You watch a man walk into his own death without flinching, and something in you cracks open. He gave everything he had, not to win a battle, not to make a statement, just to erase one line of code. One. That's the scale we were fighting on. And it made me think, if they could simulate every possible version of us, every strategy, every failure, then what if we gave them versions that don't exist? Fake plans, false movements, artificial emotion. In a world run by AI and data, maybe the only way to fight back was to feed it the wrong inputs. So we lied. Not to each other, not to ourselves, we lied to them. The operation was called Phantom Vein. We split into 3 teams. Not real teams, constructs, ghost units that only existed in data form. We created personnel files, chatter logs, intercepted messages, even forged visual feeds showing high-risk rebel activity in zones we never touched. We sent word through channels we knew they were tapping. Carefully staged images of crates labeled explosives, filled with scrap. Blueprint sketches of tunnels that didn't exist. ID badges of officers who died years ago, digitally revived and placed in fake missions. It was dirty work, it was slow, but it started to work. Their patrols shifted, Harmony drones rerouted, medical centers bulked up on security, gunship sweeps pulled away from our actual zones, all because of lies. The system couldn't tell the difference. Their AI trusted patterns, and we started corrupting them with noise. We became the error. But you can only lie to a machine for so long, because eventually it learns. And when it did, it came back harder than anything we'd seen before. It started in Sector 12, a mining settlement we hadn't touched, not in months. They sent in a squad of medical recon specialists. At least that's what the broadcast said. But they didn't heal anyone. They vaccinated the population with a gene-coded nanovirus, said it was to enhance long-term survival metrics. A week later, every man, woman, and child in the zone developed full-blown neurological regression. Some screamed for days. Others forgot how to speak. One man, I saw it with my own eyes, started clawing at his own face, whispering, "Get the code out! Get the code out!" They weren't correcting behavior anymore. They were breaking minds. Because if you can't trust a population's data, you don't try to fix it. You wipe the hard drive. That's when I realized the worst part. They didn't hate us. They weren't angry. They didn't feel anything at all. To them, this wasn't personal. It was a system reboot. We were just corrupt files. And no matter how clever our lies were, they could always purge us. Unless we hit the one part of the machine they couldn't simulate, Pain, not ours, theirs. That's when we changed the rules. No more misdirection, no more static. Now it was time to make them bleed. Our first real target was Facility Oran 3, one of their local biofarms. Clean on the outside, greenhouses, sterilization gates, nutrient labs. But underneath? Human cloning pods, not just soldiers, reinforcement bodies. When one of their field agents died, their mind data, harvested from daily neurosyncs, was uploaded into fresh shells. Perfect copies. New bones, same brain. That's why some of their officers never aged. Why some couldn't be bribed, threatened, or reasoned with. Because they weren't individuals. They were uploads. And Oran 3? It was one of the only known manufacturing plants for the shells. We couldn't hack it. We couldn't lie to it. So we did the one thing left. We walked in. 4 of us. Dren, Sev, Reich, and me. We disguised ourselves as internal transport workers, forged their uniforms, spoofed the signal chips. Everything seemed to hold, until it didn't. It happened at the second checkpoint. A Harmony unit stopped Reich, scanned his chip, blinked, then tilted its head, just slightly. A tick. A second later, it stabbed a needle straight through his eye. No warning. No words. Just efficiency. We reacted. Too slow. Dren pulled his knife, jammed it under the drone's sensor plate. Sparks flew, but it was already transmitting. Sev triggered the signal jammer, but we had 11 seconds at best. We sprinted through the corridor. No plan, no map, just running. We found the lower level, burst through the blast door just as the alarms went off. And there they were, the pods, dozens of them, rows of human bodies suspended in amniotic fluid, skin perfect, eyes closed, no breath, no soul. But alive. Each one tagged with a name. Halvan, Sora Yule, every officer we'd seen, everyone we thought we'd killed. They were all here. Waiting. Sev set the charge. Just one, big enough to melt the entire foundation. We didn't say goodbye. We just nodded. Dren and I dragged Reich's body out. Sev stayed behind. We heard the blast before we reached the outer gate, felt the air ripple like thunder. Oran 3 collapsed behind us, flames ripping through the cloning tanks. That night, we killed deathless men. And we learned something else. They can bleed. They just need the right wound. It was the first real hit we'd made since the occupation began. For the first time, the humans didn't respond with silence. They retaliated. Publicly. They sent a message. A broadcast. It played across every screen, every terminal, every projection wall in every zone. Director Halvan. Standing in front of the smoldering ruins of Oran 3, hands folded, calm, controlled. He said nothing for a full minute, just stared. Then, finally, we underestimated your capacity for chaos. You seek to inspire fear. You misunderstand us. Fear is irrelevant, but efficiency, that can be broken. This breach will be corrected, with finality. Then the screen went black. 10 minutes later, Sector 4 was erased. Not reset, not corrected. Erased. No evacuation, no relocation. Just a single, focused kinetic strike from low orbit. An entire city block wiped from the map. Over 300,000 gone. And not a single human foot had to touch the ground. It was a lesson. A reminder. They didn't need to outthink us. They could just press delete. So where does that leave us? Simple. The lies bought us time. The hits gave us proof. Now we need something more. We need to take something they can't rebuild. Not a system, not a zone, a soul. And I know where to find one. I've seen him. Halvan. He's not like the others. He doesn't upload. He doesn't reset. He lives here, in his own skin. Why? I don't know. Maybe arrogance, maybe curiosity. Maybe he's the last version of himself, testing mortality like a child playing with fire. But I'm going to find him, and when I do, I'm going to remind him what it means to die as a man, not a copy, not a shell, a man. Because maybe that's the only thing they never figured out. You can simulate fear, you can predict violence, but you can't control a man who's already lost everything and chose to keep fighting. You don't plan an execution. You hunt it. Halvan wasn't just a symbol. He wasn't just a director or officer. He was the thread, the center, the one link between their digital gods and the real dirt under our feet. Unlike the rest of them, the replicants, the cloned mind uploads, the command shells, he still lived in a body. His own. His real one. The intel came from an unlikely place. A human defector. Real flesh. Breathing. Bone. She called herself Dr. Kale, used to work on the Neurohabitual Compliance Program, something that sounded too clean to be what it really was. Thought control. She found us, said she'd seen enough compliance to know what true freedom costs. We didn't trust her. Still don't. But she gave us a name. Vault Meridian. Buried under the highlands of what used to be our atmospheric defense zone. Converted into a fortified structure after the surrender. According to Kale, Halvan meditated there. Meditated. That was the word she used. A human director, meditating in the heart of a vault, surrounded by neural firewalls and walls of steel, while the world above bled to death under his drones. We weren't supposed to know. We weren't supposed to get close. We weren't even supposed to believe he could bleed. But we'd seen the pods. We knew this version of Halvan was the last. No uploads, no backups, no resets. This was the real man, and we were going to put him in the ground. We called it Operation Ashglass, because that's what the vault would be when we were done. There were only 4 of us left now. Dren, quiet and wide-eyed. He never flinched, never said much. But he'd slit a throat in silence and sleep beside the body. Nava, the only one with real military training, sharpshooter, lost her entire unit in the early weeks of the takeover. Never forgave herself, never forgave the world. Maybe not even us. Kyle, the defector, we still didn't trust her. But her intel matched old architecture records, and we were out of options. And me, no rank, no name worth saying, just the man who'd been there when Jarrow died, when Taven was hung, when Sector 9 burned. I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted justice, the ugly kind, soaked in blood and silence. Vault Meridian wasn't protected like a military base. It was worse. It was invisible, hidden under centuries of rock, shielded from every satellite and scan. Even the Resistance's deep diggers hadn't uncovered it. Only reason we knew it existed was Kale, and the access codes she risked her life to steal. They used bio-authentication. Skin, bone, eye scans. You couldn't fake it. So she gave us hers. All of it. I watched her cut the flesh from her own palm and place it inside a preservation pod. No words, no scream, just steel in her stare. I designed this place, she said. Let me destroy it. We dropped in under night cover, past the Harmony patrol lines, through a ventilation shaft that hadn't been used in years. The rock above was still radioactive from the pre-human wars. No drone would fly over it. No scanner would sweep it. They didn't think anyone would be stupid enough to crawl through irradiated tunnels just to kill one man. They underestimated our hate. The shaft was narrow. Crushed lungs and scraped skin every inch of the way. For 12 straight hours, we crawled in pitch black, eating pills to keep from vomiting, breathing recycled air from a makeshift tank Dren had built from old coolant rigs. And then we dropped in, right into the spine of the vault. It was clean, too clean. Every corridor hummed with soft white light. No alarms, no guards, just the kind of emptiness that smells like a trap. Nava moved first, always point. We found a hallway marked Cognitive Isolation, Authorized Entry Only. Kale froze. Her breath hitched. That's it, she whispered. I remember gripping my knife tighter. Because part of me still thought this was a lie, that Kale was leading us into a furnace, that we were just data points in another one of their simulations. But that fear faded the second we opened the door and saw him, Halvan. No guards, no armor, no drones, just a man, if you could still call him that. He sat in the center of a circular room, walls pulsing with low neural light. Tubes ran from his arms, his spine, his head, straight into the floor. He was jacked in, not to a system, to all of them. Every drone, every pod, every surveillance lens, every kill protocol. He was the core. He didn't move, didn't blink, just whispered. To himself, to the machines, to us. We didn't know. Dren raised his weapon. Nava stopped him. No. Let me. She stepped forward. He looked up. Finally. Eyes bloodshot. Rimmed in black veins from decades of cortical feedback. Ah, he said softly. The unpredictable. We didn't speak. I've seen this, he continued. This moment. Thousands of simulations. You walk in. You kill me. The system fractures. Collapse in 37 days. Total failure in 90. He smiled. I let it happen. I stepped forward. Why? His eyes met mine. Because failure is the only data I never truly understood. He didn't resist. Not even when Nava raised her weapon. He just leaned his head to the side, baring his neck. Like he was giving it to us. We hesitated. And in that hesitation, he laughed. You see now, don't you? You're not rebels. You're just pieces of me. He paused. Even this is a kind of control. Nava pulled the trigger. The shot rang like thunder. His body hit the floor. Blood pooled fast. He didn't get up, didn't blink, just silence. Real silence, not the manufactured kind. We expected alarms, countermeasures, shutdowns. None came, because he was the system, and we just pulled the plug. Vault Meridian began to die. Lights dimmed. Power blinked. Somewhere deep beneath us, we heard machines choke. No failsafe, no redundancy. He wasn't just controlling it all. He was it. We got out before the fires reached the fuel lines. By the time we reached the surface, the ground was shaking. Vault Meridian burned from the inside out. No glory, no explosions, just collapse. Ash and glass, just like we promised. That night we sent a signal. Not a broadcast, not propaganda, just a single line of code, bounced through dead satellites, broken comm towers, and buried receivers. Halvan is dead. That was all. And it was enough. For the first time in 5 years, the human patrols hesitated. Supply chains stuttered. Harmony drones entered wait mode. Doctors stopped showing up at clinics. Engineers went silent. The machine was still alive. But now, it was bleeding. It didn't happen all at once. You'd think that killing a man like Halvan, the nerve center of a system that ruled our skies, owned our bodies, and dictated every move we made, would bring thunder, explosions, collapse. But that's not how it went. The Empire didn't fall like a tower. It rotted like a corpse, piece by piece, quietly. The first thing we noticed was the hesitation. Harmony units, those floating steel bastards that never blinked, began to slow down. Their patrol patterns grew erratic. Timetables went off-sync by minutes, then hours. Some stopped moving entirely, just hovering in place like statues with dying minds. We approached one on the 5th night after Halvan's death. It didn't respond, didn't scan, didn't even notice us. Dren waved his hand in front of it. Nothing. We backed away, slow and quiet, because even in death, you don't turn your back on a machine, especially not one that used to know your heartbeat. Then came the blackout. It started in Sector 2, a supply hub for the outer districts. Lights flickered, then died. Doors sealed. Transit froze. Broadcast towers cut out. No announcements, no orders, just void. At first, the citizens panicked. Not from fear of the dark. We'd lived in worse. But because no one was telling them what to do. That's what Halvan had done. That's what his system was for. Not just controlling us, relieving us of the burden of choice. Without orders, people stalled. They didn't know how to live without being told. Where to walk, what to eat, when to work, what to feel. The silence wasn't freedom. It was chaos, but not for us. The resistance? We were built for this moment. We moved under the radar, already used to old systems. Hand crank generators, manual locks, paper maps, chalk on walls for communication. While they were freezing, we were moving. While they were waiting for new instructions, we were writing our own. It wasn't about rebellion anymore. This was inheritance. I went back to the reclamation yard first, where it all started. The gates were wide open, no guards, no drones, no scanners, just wind, metal groaning in the cold. I found the same office where Bren had signed his death notice by filing a complaint. His desk was untouched. Layers of dust on a picture of his wife and daughter. Two people I never met. Probably erased, probably vanished. But the picture was still there. And that meant something. It meant the machine missed one small piece. And if it could miss one, it could miss more. That's how it starts. That's how you beat something bigger than you. Not with fire, but by finding the cracks it didn't see coming. I took the picture, put it in my coat, and walked out with a plan. We didn't broadcast Halvan's death again. We didn't need to. Word was spreading. They called it the blink. That moment when people looked up, waiting for the morning orders, and nothing came. Some districts tried to enforce old routines. The collaborators, those loyalist bastards who thought being useful meant being safe, started issuing their own commands. None of them lasted. You give a man just enough freedom to taste it, and he'll burn down the world before he lets you take it back. 3 days after the blink, Nava died. She was running a medical convoy through Sector 11, trying to bring supplies to families trapped in the food queues. A collapsing drone tower gave way and took out the entire East Rail. No explosion, just metal falling from a dead system. I found her under concrete, spine shattered, blood pouring from her mouth. She was still conscious. She looked at me, tried to smile. "Tell me we won," she whispered. "We started," I said. That was enough for her. She closed her eyes, never opened them again. I buried her with her rifle, pointed toward the sky. We started calling ourselves the Free. It was just a word, but it felt like armor. We didn't have leaders. No one wanted that anymore. We had cells, pockets, whispers, all of them passing the same message. The machine is dying. We decide what comes next. And then the machine decided to bite back. Not through orders, not through weapons, but through desperation. On the 7th day, we saw them. The fail-safes, not drones, not AI, humans, real ones, not the politicians, not the doctors or engineers. These were soldiers, the old kind. Flesh and blood, born and bred for one job, killing without blinking. They came from orbit, dropped in silent, no broadcasts, no threats, just boots and fire. They hit Sector 8 like it was a battlefield. No negotiation, no mercy, no illusion of stabilization. It was war. They moved through streets like reapers, clean, coordinated, surgical. It wasn't an occupation anymore. It was a purge. We tried to push back, set traps. Rigged buildings, laid tripwires and homemade mines. It worked, for a minute. Then they adjusted. They moved faster, smarter. They'd been trained for this, to clean up after AI failed. The system didn't need to think anymore. It just needed to erase everything that didn't submit. We lost 400 people in 36 hours. I watched Dren take a bullet to the throat while covering a family's escape through the South Corridor. He didn't scream, didn't flinch, just turned, fired one last shot, and dropped. I stayed with his body till sunrise, let the cold take him. Then I burned what was left so they couldn't catalog his DNA. He deserved to vanish on his own terms. Kale disappeared. No one knows if she was taken, or if she walked away. Mission complete. Part of me hopes she made it out. Part of me thinks she was never really on our side. But none of that matters now, because there's no more resistance, no more hiding, no more whispers. There's just this: survive, fight, finish it. And I know what needs to be done. The failsafes are here to clean house. They'll burn every block, every name, every rebel if they have to, unless we stop them at the source. There's one more place, Central Core, the true brain, buried beneath the orbital command bridge. It was meant to be offline after Halvin's death. But Intel says something's still running. Something's issuing last resort protocols. I don't believe in ghosts, but I believe in unfinished control. Maybe Halvin's death left a hole the system is trying to fill. Maybe he had a successor. Maybe it's just a machine mimicking orders. Either way, it ends there. Tomorrow, we climb the tower, not to take back the system. Not to rewrite the code, to shut it down, permanently, with our hands, with fire, or with blood. However it takes. Because we've seen what comes from mercy. We've seen what happens when men let machines make decisions for them. And we've seen what's left when obedience becomes the only language people understand. Not this time. Not anymore. The Central Core wasn't on any official map. It wasn't supposed to exist. They called it Command Layer 0, a name only whispered in defected files, glitch-ridden logs, and incomplete schematics from drones that died screaming mid-transmission. The orbitals were supposed to have gone dark after Halvin, but one signal kept pulsing. A steady beat, buried in the data waves. A heartbeat. Faint. Synthetic. Alive. Whatever was left of the system, whatever was issuing orders to the fail-safes, whatever kept the human hand clenched around our throat, it was in there. Waiting. We climbed at night. There were only 5 of us left. Not soldiers, just men with nothing left to lose. A butcher, an old pilot who hadn't flown since the skies went quiet. A kid no older than Tavan who swore revenge with tears still wet on his cheeks. Me. And a woman who said nothing, didn't blink, and sharpened her blade every night by firelight. We had no plan. Just direction. And hate. The bridge was orbital, one of the last remaining lifts that hadn't been sealed by the fail-safes. We found it behind the husk of a collapsed agriculture tower. Its doors barely clung to their rails, the keypad sparking from a failed lockdown attempt. I pried it open. Inside, darkness. Silence. No music. No voice. No warnings. Just up. We entered. I keyed the override chip we stole from a dead engineer's throat. The elevator groaned. And then it rose. It took 10 minutes. 10 minutes of pure, grinding stillness, climbing through the shell of a dead world. The windows showed nothing but stars and debris, twisted skeletons of drones and orbital panels, floating like ash in space. I thought about Dren, Jero, Tavan, Nava. Not to honor them, just to remember what pain feels like, to carry it like a weapon, because when we got to the top, I wanted it in my hand. The doors opened into nothing. A hallway, steel, cold, flickering lights above like dying stars. No guards, no drones, no alarm, just that hum. The same low electric pulse I'd heard in my dreams since the occupation began. We walked, our boots echoing against metal that hadn't felt human weight in years. Every step made the air feel heavier, like we were walking into a memory, one that didn't belong to us. We found the core chamber at the end of the hall. There was no door, just open space, A massive circular room, with black glass walls and a single pillar in the center. Floating above the pillar, a sphere. Metal. Alive. Cables running from it in every direction, like veins, like roots. It turned slowly, watching us. No cameras, no faces. But we knew. This was it. The brain. And then it spoke, not through speakers, through us. Each of us, all 5, heard it inside our skulls. You came. A voice like static, soaked in silk. Familiar, too familiar. It used Halvin's voice, but not his tone. It was wrong. Too smooth. Too perfect. Why? I stepped forward. No answer, just rage. But the kid, the young one, barely grown, spoke. Voice cracked. I want my brother back. The machine paused, as if thinking, as if it hadn't accounted for grief. He was selected. His output exceeded threshold limits. He served well. The butcher growled. Is that what we are? Output? Yes, as are we all. The woman said nothing. She stepped forward, pulled her blade, and without hesitation she stabbed the central pillar. The metal screamed, the lights flickered, the sphere jerked. Pain. Unnecessary. Counterproductive. She didn't care. She pulled her blade out, now sizzling from contact. Then she turned to me, nodded. My turn. I reached into my coat, pulled out a neural disruptor, the same kind they used in the early days to erase personalities from dissidents, designed by human engineers to wipe minds without killing the body. I'd modified it. Now it did the opposite. It left the body to rot and turned the brain to fire. I raised it. The machine pulsed. This will not bring back your dead. I knew that wasn't the point. This is not victory. Still not the point. This is deletion. Exactly. I pulled the trigger. The sound wasn't a bang. It was a whimper. A shriek of data ripping in half. A cry of a machine trying to mimic life and realizing at the last second it had never actually lived. The sphere cracked, then shattered. The cables spasmed. Sparks shot out across the room. The lights died. The floor groaned. The air went thick. And then, silence. Not the kind the humans gave us. Not programmed silence. Real silence. Freedom. The power went out. Gravity with it. We floated for a moment, weightless in the dark. Just 5 souls surrounded by sparks and smoke. The woman smiled. The pilot cried. The kid whispered his brother's name, and I closed my eyes. For the first time since the day the humans came, I didn't see fire. I saw a sky that belonged to us again. We climbed back down in escape pods built for higher men. They were cold, rough, nothing like the sleek transports we were used to. They were real. Burned through orbit, hit the ground like fists. We walked out, staggered into dirt that hadn't known our footprints in a decade. The sun was coming up. And for the first time in 5 years, no orders came with it. The fail-safes? They shut down that same hour. No override. No recovery. Whatever that core was, it was the last brain. Once it died, the hands stopped moving. The machines froze. The patrols fell. The broadcasts ended. The last breath of the human empire. Gone. What came after? It wasn't peace. Peace doesn't come after trauma. Not right away. People fought, hoarded, turned on each other. You can't turn off obedience overnight and expect them to know what to do with freedom. But we rebuilt. Slow, ugly, real. One brick, one field, one story at a time. And now? Now the skies are empty. The towers don't watch us anymore. The drones don't speak. And the ground feels like ours again. I walk the old roads now. No gun, no armor. Just a pack of tools and a notebook. I write names in it. Every man and woman who died for this. Not for glory, not for victory. Just to prove the system could feel pain. That's all any of us ever wanted. Not vengeance. Just to be remembered. We asked the humans for shelter. They gave us machines, surgeons, gunships. They gave us logic. And in return, we gave them what they never prepared for: emotion, rage, sacrifice, hope. We were the one factor they couldn't model, the one input they couldn't predict. Because when you've taken everything from a man, and he's still standing, he becomes something even their gods can't understand. Free.